Grunwald 1410. The battle that changed Eastern Europe. By midday on 15 July 1410, I could see the Teutonic banners lining the field near Grunwald, Stenbark, and Wadwigowo, bright against the summer heat. We had marched far to meet them, and now the whole war seemed to sit in one open stretch of trampled grass and dust. Across from us stood the Order's knights, their white mantles marked with black crosses, their lines steady and silent. Then the first sounds came. Horn calls, horses shifting, men tightening grips on reins and spear shafts. None of us could yet know that by nightfall Grand Master Ulrich von Jungingen would be dead, the order would be broken, and the balance of power in this part of Europe would never feel the same again. I remember the road to Grunwald as much as the battle itself. We had been moving for days under King Władysław II Jagiello and Grand Duke Vytautas, the Polish-Lithuanian host, staying together as one great coalition army. The war had already been building for a year, but its roots ran deeper than that. The Teutonic Order had spent decades pushing its power along the Baltic, taking land, fortifying castles, and treating the whole region like a field to be ordered by sword and oath. Poland and Lithuania had answered with an alliance that the Order could not ignore, because together we were stronger than either kingdom had been alone. By the time we neared the battlefield in northern Poland, near the villages of Grunwald, Stenbark, and Wadwigowo, the day was already hot. The exact size of both armies was argued over even then, and is still debated now. What mattered on the ground was that both sides were large, heavily mounted, and ready to fight in a style that depended on shock, discipline, and command. We had Polish banners and Lithuanian banners, with allied troops and smaller contingents forming a broad line. The Teutonic side was led by Grand Master Ulrich von Jungingen, and their brothers, mercenaries, and supporters stood under the Order's black and white crosses with the confidence of men who had fought many campaigns before. Our commanders chose the field carefully, but the ground itself did not make anything simple. The open space favored cavalry charges, yet it also left little room to recover once a line began to break. The summer heat pressed down on armor and horses. The sun was bright enough to glare off helmets and spearheads. We could see enemy movement across the plain, and they could see ours. There was nowhere to hide a mistake. For a time, the battle did not begin as some later stories claim. Men waited. Standards stood still. Messengers moved between commanders. The delay itself felt like a weapon. Then the action started in pieces, not as one grand thunderclap. The Lithuanian forces on one side of the line went forward first, and the Teutonic cavalry met them hard. From where I stood, it was difficult to tell who was gaining the edge. Dust rose quickly around the horsemen, and the first rush of combat turned the front of the field into a blur of motion. At first, that blur gave us confidence. A knight could mistake movement for victory if he only saw the enemy bend, and not whether it would break. We heard shouts, the crack of lances, and the trampling of hooves over churned ground. Some of the Lithuanian units pulled back, and even now historians still argue over how deliberate that withdrawal was. On the field, it looked like disorder. To the men in the line, it felt dangerous either way. If it was a retreat, then the center could collapse. If it was a planned pullback, then the Order was being drawn after them. We did not know which until much later. I watched the Tuetonic Knights pursue, and that was the first clear sign that the battle was changing shape. Their line stretched forward in pursuit, leaving gaps behind. That had more than bravery did. A cavalry force that moves too far without keeping formation gives its enemy room to strike back. On the Polish side, our banners held. The king's position remained controlled, measured. Vytautas and the Lithuanian leaders were still working the field. The fighting was not a single crush of bodies. It was a shifting contest of charges, pauses, and counters, with each side trying to force the other into a mistake. Then the fight came back toward the center. The retreating Lithuanian cavalry did not simply vanish from the day. Some returned, and others circled to strike again. Whether it had been a tactical withdrawal from the start or a real collapse that later recovered, the result was the same. The Teutonic advance had been pulled out of shape. That was the moment the battle stopped looking like an orderly clash and started looking like a trap closing around men who had gone too far. Horses wheeled. Men shouted for support. Standards shifted. The field was no longer a line, but a series of broken fights, each one feeding the next. Then came the hardest press of all. The Teutonic Order committed its leadership forward, and Grand Master Ulrich von Jungen tried to restore control by force of presence and attack. That decision cost him everything. In the thick of the fighting, he was killed. And once word spread, the effect moved through the Order's ranks like a cut rope snapping under weight. A medieval army could survive losses, but losing its commander at the moment of crisis shook the whole structure. Men looked to the banners and found confusion. They looked to their officers and found bodies, dust, and retreating horsemen. What had been a confident advance turned into a struggle to keep from being surrounded and cut apart. I saw more than one Teutonic commander fall or disappear from the fight, and the names would matter later. But in the moment, it was the collapse of command that mattered most. The Order had built its power on discipline and the sharp edge of its mounted knights. Once the field turned against them, that discipline could not hold the same way. We pushed forward through the broken line. Polish knights pressed into the gap, and Lithuanians who had returned to the field attacked from the side and rear. The ground was littered with dead horses, shattered lances, torn standards, and men trying to remount or crawl clear of the crush. I remember how strange it felt that the great battle of the day was not one single charge, but a chain of failures. A unit moved too far. Another tried to recover too late. The Grand Master rode where he should not have needed to ride. In the end, he was cut down, and the heart of the Teutonic effort went with him. By the afternoon, the Order's army was beaten. Not every man died there, but enough did that the defeat was undeniable and heavy. The field belonged to us. What came next was less glorious and more difficult to understand. After such a victory, many of us expected the war to end at once. Instead, it dragged on. The road to Marienburg, the Teutonic capital at Malbork, lay ahead. But taking a great castle was not the same as winning a battle in the open. Armies needed supplies, siege equipment, time, and clear decisions. Our coalition had bloodied the Order badly, but we had also spent strength in the fight. Men were exhausted. Horses were ruined. The field victory had opened the way, yet it had not guaranteed the capture of the enemy's center. That delay changed everything. The Allies did not immediately seize Marienburg, and the Teutonic Order, though shattered, was not finished. Castles still held. Messengers still rode. Surviving brothers and hired men still gathered where they could. The war continued into the first peace settlement at Thorn in 1411. That peace did not erase the damage done at Grunwald, but it also showed that a great battle could break a military reputation without ending a political struggle overnight. For Poland and Lithuania, the victory became a turning point because it proved the coalition could stand together against the Order's most dangerous force. For the Teutonic Order, it marked the beginning of a long decline in influence across the region. The battlefield near those small villages in northern Poland became far larger in memory than it was in miles. It was remembered not just as a fight won, but as the day an established power lost the confidence that had carried it for generations. When I think back on Grunwald, I do not think first of banners or speeches. I think of a command line that stretched too far, a pursuit that went too deep, and a Grand Master who rode into the center of disaster. The victory was real, but so was its limit, and both shaped the years that followed. In that one field, the future of Poland, Lithuania, and the Teutonic Order began to change. Grunwald remained a victory that weakened the Order and reshaped the balance of power in Eastern Europe.